Artists on the Verge is a program that we've run for, we're now going into our 5th year, although this exhibition is the end of our 4th year, with support from the Jerome Foundation to support emerging artists working sort of in the intersection of digital media, digital culture, social media networks. And we work with 5 different artists who are juried in through an open call. And it's a year-long, pretty intensive process of starting with a project and working through with ideas and working with individual mentors and ending up with an exhibition at the end of the year.
It's been an intense year. The proposal that I submitted to get into this fellowship has certainly been developed further, and that really I think is attributed to the critiques, the ongoing critiques and input I've had from the other fellows as well as the directors and then mentors, of course.
Artists on the Verge is about emerging artists in the field of media, and my work is kind of a combination of sculpture that uses media, media that uses sculpture, so that worked really well for me. And so we worked with the kind of like the public art aspect of it, or basically the interactive quality of the sculptures. A lot of the artists have had similar experiences with their mentors. They work with them to kind of understand how the public should interact with their pieces, or hopefully how they'll interact with their pieces.
We had always seen the calls for submissions and thought, we are the least technological people. Like, we don't use video in our work, we barely maintain our Twitter account, you know, we really value that live moment. And so we had a hard time for a long time figuring out how we would fit into a program like this, so we didn't apply.
But then we've also been thinking about these phone dances for a while, in part because none of us are from here and all of our families live far away. And one of the struggles of doing live work and valuing that moment of being in a room together and experiencing the same thing in the same time, in the same space, is that you can't share that easily with your family and your loved ones who are far away. And so we've been talking about telephone dances for a while as one way of dealing with that, and just how to tour somewhere without actually touring there, how to be elsewhere, and how to move beyond that thing that we love so much, which is being in a room together, but what other possibilities there are. And so we realized when this call for submissions came around that, oh, this is the thing that we've been thinking about that would totally match, would totally fit, and this would be a great place to try those experiments and work more with that idea.
The projection is literally fills that space quite neatly.
So the projection's here, not here?
This is kind of like my first real step into my professional practice, which has been a really great experience to have a mentor and have all this support and help in getting to the point where I am now. And this is a really great opportunity for me to just kind of have a larger scale audience and resources and everything.
I usually make slightly humorous institutions. So I've created schools and fake corporations and now a fake library. Usually with the sort of central underlying theme of people recognizing sort of their place in institutions and the creative power that they have. And most of that usually comes through cultural appropriation and cultural remix. So encouraging people to share what they've learned perhaps in a schoolhouse and showing them that that sort of sharing of knowledge is sort of as important and as valuable as perhaps what goes on in a college classroom, and that that sort of transfer of ideas is its own sort of social sculpture.
Until I came down to install, I just imagined just my sculptures down here. I didn't really imagine at all this plastic. This was not even part of it, which now I realize as I was installing my sculptures and I hung a couple pieces of these plastic up to see what it looked like, I'm realizing that shaping the space for my sculptures is like at least 50% of what the installation is about. So that's why I feel like I've been kind of pushing on that. It's one of those really long, unexpected things that I have to do now for my installation, which is a little bit tough to manage, but I think it's coming together.
These are all laser cut. So the material is acrylic with black vinyl applied to the inside of it, and then they're laser cut.
I have a lot of work based off of memory and home and place and space. I define space as kind of like this geographical point that isn't attached to any memories or anything, whereas place is when you attach your memories through time, through experience. So you kind of have these, just these really strong memories tied to these places. So I'm interested in really exploring the space around us and just how we are so attached to where we live and how that plays into our personalities and characteristics and who we are. So this piece is kind of less about the memory side of my work and more about just the space itself and kind of trying to delve into what kind of the bare bones of how it affects us.
Our group is called Mad King Thomas, and the big secret is that it's based on our last names, Maddest, King, and Thomas.
We like that it evokes the crazy monarch and also the anger and kind of powers that be.
My project is called The Library. It's a fully functioning library made up of some kind of bizarre books. Each book that exists in the library was downloaded from the internet in its original text and then was altered by some software that I wrote. So there's 5 different types of alterations in the library.
Oh, we got the same book.
You did, but different alterations. Yeah.
So all the alteration and printing is happening sort of live. So I have a database of text downloaded from the internet, and the sort of librarian says, I need a new book once he's done binding the previous book, and so a new book will be sort of altered and printed, and then the librarian will bind it and shelve it and then come back and start the next one.
So I've just been doing this for days, attaching by rope these pieces of plastic, and then once I attach them, I cut them to a nice shape, and then I melt them so they all kind of meld together as one giant piece. Ah, it's stuck. See how bad that would be with real hands.
Yeah.
Ungloved. Awesome. Oh yeah. It's cool enough.
Primarily we make stage shows, but also we've done like installation, performance, endurance, durational based performance in a gallery, and we've done some dance films, but we consider ourselves choreographers and dancers, and a lot of people don't think that that's what we are, and we accept that. We accept that. We accept different names, and we also accept that we have a really broad understanding and definition of what dance is and what dance can be.
The Profile Cube is a project that really began when I started getting really fascinated with the personalization of my internet experience. So the more I was online, all of these different websites, I'd be searching for, say, a USB cord, and then I'd be on a different site, and all of a sudden they're suggesting which USB cord I should use. And I think the fascination made me start exploring what that would be like. What's the psychological experience of that? And, what exactly do we learn from these small windows or small little suggestions of who they think we are? And so the project really explores it that way. In some ways, it's a parody of that, and there's a whole intake process that happens where users and gallery participants come in and they're asked a series of questions. And so those questions range from psychological testing to pop cultural references. And then this profile cube that we've created, this 8 by 8 foot cube, is essentially going to tell you who you are based on that interaction. And so I think the parts that I'm most interested in is the fact that these projections come through, literally coming through, assaulting and reflective light that illuminates who you are.
Usually people don't let me use a heat gun indoors, so this has been really exciting. Yeah, see how smooth and shiny that is? And it just keeps stretching it the more it cools off. Gives these nice layers in between the pieces. Where there's tension, where it's like pulling, see how it stretches? But in the middle it contracts, so it does like, and then all the other parts stretch, kind of neat stuff.
My project is about space and movement. I'm interested in the ways we have built various infrastructures and how they influence how we move, either subconsciously or make us very aware of the spaces we're moving through. I have kind of collected these little pieces out in the world and within the soap factory that I find to be kind of like these funny spaces. For example, I was really interested in these borders when we cross states, as in the Minnesota-Iowa border. You're driving down the highway and you see the "You are now leaving Minnesota" sign. Then half a mile later you see the "Welcome to Iowa" sign. So I'm interested in that space in between, as far as, you know, you could be two places at once or nowhere at all, but it's this imaginary border that we've set up. So I'm kind of just pointing out all these funny spaces out in the world that either become obstacles or just influence kind of our location in the world.
There are two parts. One is called A Dance for You, and the other is called A Dance for Them. And A Dance for You consists of some text on a mirror giving people instructions to give us a call and leave a message with what they need. And then we call them back throughout the month with the phone dances that we have prescribed for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it will be an interruption. That's not a planned time, so it will affect their day.
People are confronted with a touch screen that just has the word "start" on it. And from there, there's this process that people begin to fill out questions. And some questions are really straightforward and have to do with just strictly like colors. And other options on the screen have to do with pop culture references. Once that process is complete, then the individual can go to the cube and enter their name, and their name allows them access, it functions like a username, to get the results of who they are. So once they're inside this blacked out cube, the walls are perforated with words, descriptive words, and the words that pertain to the person that's in the cube at the time get illuminated. So the light shines through and actually sheds light directly on the person. as to who they are, and that filter process of those words start explaining who you are and exposing that profile. And then upon exiting, they're given an archive or a receipt of their transaction.
I've made smaller animatronic sculptures using robotics to make things move, and they look like unusual creatures from another planet, or maybe from this planet, but pre-evolved. And I've also made environments made out of metal. So like aluminum landscapes that are kind of dreamlike. They have that dreamlike quality to it, kind of surreal. And so the deal for this project was to combo those two ideas to create, in a way, creatures that were landscape, and that this landscape that was alive kind of felt like a creature, could respond to people as they walked by it. So the thing is it's kind of like one organism that I'm creating that is a combination of the two kinds of art that I've been working with.
So I'm going to try to connect these two.
My project is transforming this basement area into a fully immersive, interactive environment. And I built this plastic enclosure for these sculptures, which kind of half inflatable and half not. And they inflate to a rhythm that's like breathing and will move and interact with people when they walk through it. And then also creating, to really give it that feeling that these sculptures belong in this place, I gave it this kind of cave-like, or this environment is more almost fantasy, science fiction, underworld type. So that's kind of the environment that I'm creating. And there's fans that inflate these sculptures, and the fans also, when the sculptures move, the ceiling moves too, which will move in like a rhythm. And then there are lights that do a dimming sequence, which you can kind of see in the background, which will light up the sculptures and kind of emphasize this breathing rhythm that I'm trying to make the environment do.
A dance for them is in the galleries and in the gallery piece, and it is performed by the people who are coming to the gallery. There are instructions again and a stage, and they are asked to call whomever they choose from the stage, and the dance begins when they begin their call, and it ends when they hang up and leave.
And they become the performers in the piece, and their body language that happens while they're on the phone becomes the dance.
This project, for me, is an investigation of language, how malleable it is, how we can sort of create new meaning through almost like a language montage. If you sort of combine words, even almost at random or through cut up, you can produce new narratives and new meanings. And for me, that's sort of the goal, is that people will come away from the library looking at text differently and not being as intimidated by some of the sort of beasts which maybe they haven't tackled, like War and Peace or Gravity's Rainbow, but they would feel a sort of interest in the language there, and also willingness to just sort of read maybe parts of it or just try to understand sort of a few sentences or a few chapters, and not feel intimidated by sort of the canon of Western literature, but be able to combine the text into something new and sort of exciting.
So in the gallery, people will walk in, they'll see these two welcome and leaving signs. You're now leaving the gallery, Gallery 1, and then welcome to Gallery 2, and so those kind of represent the highway signs. And then they'll be able to pick up a map that will provide various paths to move around the gallery space. and these paths are all based on different kind of movements within the world. So I'm kind of just pointing out all these funny spaces that either become obstacles or just influence our location in the world.
For the past 2 years, Soap Factory has been the home of the exhibition and a key partner in the Artists on the Verge program, and it's really, I think, a perfect kind of match between our work with the emerging artists and Soap Factory's work with emerging and more established artists from both the Twin Cities and around the world.
This project is really complex in the fact that there's a lot of layers that have gone on, and the interesting thing about the project is I consider it to be a collaboration between myself, a computer scientist, a psychologist, and an architect. And all of these people I've been sort of bouncing ideas with have really influenced and shaped the project, and that's typically how I work in general. But when it all comes together, the layers are really complex.
Okay. Got one little piece. I guess the one thing I want to add about this project is that there's a lot of unexpected things that happen. So for me, I had a grand vision, and in the beginning I had more media involved, and I've kind of like narrowed mine down to something that I feel like feels more simple. Not that it was simple to do, but more simple to understand, I feel like. So instead of having like this mapping going on where people walk through and there's all this crazy stuff happening, I just wanted to make the things seem understandable, you know, like they could actually be breathing, you know, like it had a realistic quality to it that was very material instead of digital. So that was like a huge growing part for me, just learning how to understand that's what I wanted.
A question that I often get is if the books were downloaded legally or illegally. And for me, I think that it's important that it's both. Some of the books are in the public domain. They've sort of become classics, a few hundred years old, and are sort of are in the public domain. And then there are some texts which are still under copyright and protected. And for me, I think that the idea of remix and sort of alteration and appropriation are sort of very important to the creative process. And so for me, I think it's very important that people feel the liberty to take what someone else has made and remake it into something new. And so that sort of is at the heart of the library, is about people making their own new narratives, and we use the cultural raw materials that already exist to do that.
Big credit to Steve and Peter, the program directors, and whoever else was on the panel, because I think a lot of what they appreciated about our application was that we didn't know what they are. We don't know what phone dances are. We didn't then, and we've learned a lot, but
it took a big...
The sheer mystery of that phrase, I think, captivated them, and it was very bold of them to, they didn't know us, to say, come on in and make your phone dances with us. So that's been really nice to have that.
And it's been a big learning experience to be working with visual artists, because we have been really performance-based, and it's kind of amazing how skilled people are at creation in a physical form and conceptualizing around that. So we've really, I think, enjoyed hearing that way of processing, hearing that way of working, hearing that way of thinking, and kind of, I think it's opened different doors for how we can think about making work.
Which is great.
Yeah, like maybe we'll make some stuff that actually can physically exist.